بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to donate to Palestine and to support the channel. I was sent a clip of Ben Shapiro mouthing off Zionist propaganda on Piers Morgan's platform to justify Israel now targeting the refugee camp in Rafah that holds 1.5 million displaced Palestinian people. These people were told to leave North Gaza 6 months ago so Israel could attack it, and now that the north has been flattened, Israel is attacking the very place they told these people to go to. In the first clip I'll show you, Ben Shapiro actually complains about Egypt not opening their borders up to take in the already displaced Palestinian refugees in Rafah, rather than addressing the fact that Israel is now choosing to target southern Gaza to carry out attacks that will no doubt result in even more civilian casualties in the tens of thousands. It has now become clear that this was a two-stage ethnic cleansing plan. First, Israel would force the Palestinians out of North Gaza to Rafah in South Gaza. Then Israel would force them out to a whole different country, and if they don't or can't leave, Israel would just wipe them out. Shapiro also co-signed his buddy Netanyahu's orders to continue this bloodbath, despite the UN Security Council passing a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire, which Israel has ignored. And in the second clip I'll show you, Ben Shapiro went on to further dehumanise ordinary Palestinian civilians by generalising them all as being radicalised, to justify the death count so far, and also to rationalise the devastation that is to come in Rafah in the very near future. Ben also hinted at Israel ruling over Palestine, or what's left of it, indefinitely, basically saying Israel will police them forever, as if they are human cattle, even after Hamas is gone. Let's take a look at the first clip where Ben Shapiro tells Piers why Israel attacking Rafah is necessary despite the UN calling for a ceasefire.
We've talked about this war a lot. Do you feel comfortable about a full assault on Rafah if 1.5 million people remain in that vicinity, including majority women and children? Because it would obviously be, in that instance, devastating in terms of civilian casualties and would pour even more pressure on Israel and lose them even more support. I mean, do you think this is the right strategy?
Well, I think that Israel is pretty united in its belief that it is, and Israel, I think, is best positioned to adjudicate its own interests when it comes to things like you're talking about, whether it's international support or the future of the Gaza Strip. One of the big problems has been that Egypt won't open the gate, even temporarily, to allow enough civilians outside of Rafah so that Israel can perform operations inside of Rafah. I'm sure that if the United States or the international community could offer Israel some sort of Harry Potter spell to disappear all of the Hamas terrorists inside Rafah, I'm sure Israel would take it. The last thing Israel wants to do is maximize civilian casualties. What's been perfectly obvious is that Hamas has precisely the opposite view. They would love to maximize civilian casualties because the increasing civilian death toll, as you've pointed out, has been the single factor that's been leading to increased pressure on Israel to leave Hamas alone. This particular version of the UN resolution sort of separates off the two issues, doesn't mention Hamas, doesn't mention October 7th. That's the point of contention with regard to the UN Security Council resolution the United States abstained from. Is morally wrong to abstain from a resolution that seems to disconnect the hostage situation from the ceasefire. The central reality in Israel, which is that there is full-scale public support for going into Rafah from right, left, and center. The current government of the state of Israel is a war cabinet, including the chief rival to Benjamin Netanyahu, Benny Gantz. Netanyahu is in fact correct when he suggests that there is broad public support for going into Rafah.
Shapiro has the gall to call for Egypt to open up its borders to take in the people in Rafah. Why should they? So Israel can expand and build more illegal settlements? How about Israel opening up their borders and taking in the 1.5 million displaced people in Rafah? Since Israel always claims the moral high ground and insists that they must attack Rafah, why don't they take in all the displaced Palestinians that are innocent civilians and then go into Rafah? I'll tell you why. Because they don't want to live side by side with them. This is not just about taking out Hamas, it's about taking over Palestine. Ben blatantly said that all political parties in Israel, even rival ones, as well as the Israeli public, are united in this mission to destroy Rafah. Shapiro then made the false claim that Israel doesn't want to maximise civilian casualties, but Hamas does, because the civilian death toll puts pressure on Israel to agree to a ceasefire. Anyone with a shred of morality would be appalled at the loss of human life, yet here Ben is casually dismissing it as some sort of bargaining chip. Shapiro then went on to say the ceasefire proposed by the UN didn't include the release of Israeli hostages, and that's why it's a bad deal for Israel. However, the ceasefire proposed by Hamas in February 2024 did include the release of hostages, but Israel rejected it. This reeks of an ulterior motive. Even Piers Morgan disagreed with Netanyahu on this. Piers pointed out the dwindling international support for Israel because of their inhumane actions, and Ben responded by asking for a magic spell from the international community to find an alternative solution. The fact is, Ben, Israel don't want a solution, they want domination. Israel could sit down with other superpowers and try to come up with some sort of peaceful conclusion, but they don't want that because they have an end goal of implementing the Zionist agenda. Zionism is a European nationalist political ideology that called for the creation and existence of Israel as a state. The movement secured support among Western European governments, particularly after Zionists agreed to create a state in historic Palestine. The Zionists' early objective was to claim as much of historic Palestine as possible by driving out the Palestinian population. Arabs still outnumbered them in Palestine to start with. Thus, Zionist leaders were well aware that implementing their agenda would require the ethnic cleansing of the indigenous Palestinian population. In 1948, the World Zionist Organization founded the State of Israel in Palestine, allowing any Jewish person from anywhere in the world to immigrate there and claim citizenship. Zionists utilised colonialism to achieve their objective by violently ethnically cleansing the Palestinian population and by building illegal settlements in occupied Palestinian territories. Let's take a look at the next clip where Ben Shapiro stereotypes all Palestinians as radicalised extremists in order to justify their mass elimination and also to rationalise why Israel must rule over them forever.
What I don't understand about Israel's strategy is how they perceive actual victory. Yes, you can take out the 30 to 35,000 Hamas terrorists. Yeah, maybe they can do that. And maybe in the process of that, they kill tens of thousands more civilians and have to deal with the contention that will cause worldwide. And maybe Israelis don't care about that part as long as they get rid of Hamas. So let's get to an endgame where Hamas has gone. Why does leveling Gaza, killing so many civilians, why would that give anyone in Israel any kind of comfort that would kill off the ideology that fueled Hamas, that it wouldn't actually just lead to an increase in that ideology, more hatred towards Israelis, more hatred towards Jewish people? I've never quite understood what the end game looks like here for Israel that makes Israel more secure.
Well, I mean, the end game presumably is security, not a sort of dynamic ideological scoring among a population that right now overwhelmingly supports the October 7th attacks, and prior to October 7th, overwhelmingly supported terror attacks against the state of Israel and overwhelmingly supported the destruction of the state of Israel. From the Israeli perspective, my assumption is that what they are figuring is degrade Hamas's military capacity such that they cannot be an offensive threat to the state of Israel, and then try to enact some sort of military control of the area sufficient to prevent any future threat from arising from that area. I'm sure that Israel would love to hand the area over to Egypt. Egypt says no. Egypt doesn't want any part of it. Israel would love to hand it over to Jordan. Jordan says no. Jordan doesn't want any part of it. Israel's tried to hand it over to the Saudis, to the UAE, to the United States, to literally anyone. No one wants to run that area specifically because the population is already quite radicalized and was radicalized before October 7th. And so what you're probably going to end up with, and I said this, I think, the first time I appeared on the show, which was shortly after October 7th in this context, what you're probably going to end up with is some form of joint military rule in the Gaza Strip in which Israel has the intelligence capacity to go in and conduct raids in terror hotbeds the same way that they do right now, for example, in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, places like Jenin, places like Nablus. The IDF is constantly attempting to go in and root out terror cells in these particular areas. One of the big flaws that led to October 7th was the fact that Israel had no forces on the ground and no actual intelligence capability inside the Gaza Strip.
You saw Piers question Shapiro on how levelling Gaza solves anything and what Israel's endgame is after Hamas is gone, as people will want revenge. Piers also pointed out that this will result in tens of thousands of additional Palestinian casualties, on top of the 30,000 plus that have already took place. To which Ben's answer was, they are all radicalised anyway, so it's all good. And that Israel will just enslave and police Palestine forever and persecute them as they please. Can you believe that? Shapiro is implying all Palestinians are extremists. Half of their population are kids. It's just disgustingly discriminatory to speak about a whole population like this. Ben then went on to say that after Israel has destroyed Palestine, they asked the UAE, Saudi, the US, Egypt, Jordan, etc. to come in and clean up the mess made by Israel and to run Palestine, but they don't want to. Why would any other country want to come in to rebuild the mess Israel has made, with Israel breathing down their neck to ensure every move they make pleases Israel, or else they'll face the potential conflict if they don't comply? Here's an idea, Ben. How about Israel give the land and political power back to the Palestinians, but once again that doesn't serve the Zionist agenda. Shapiro talked about Israel policing Palestine indefinitely with no mention of rebuilding the destruction they've caused. Guess that's not part of the plan. From their conduct so far, it is scary to think of the additional atrocities that will take place behind the scenes once Israel established complete control over Palestine. Ben isn't just the geek he comes across as online. He is a powerful Zionist that sits with people like Trump and Netanyahu to further their political agendas, and heads a massive media organisation that sways public opinion in favour of the agendas he is involved in. Remember what Ben said on October 8th.
Israel kills enough of these sons of bitches that this is not a problem again. There cannot be a ceasefire. Anyone who calls for a ceasefire is a terrorist sympathizer under these circumstances.
It's quite clear where Shapiro stands. The common theme with all these Zionists seems to be that they don't see the lives of Palestinians as equal to theirs, or as valuable in general for that matter. And they don't want a ceasefire, as their quest for supremacy comes before anything else. The sad fact is, nothing is going to save Palestine by the looks of it. We can only hope for the best and for international powers to get actively involved. What has happened to Palestine will take decades for them to come back from. That is if they even survive this at all. Let's pray for them and send them aid and charity for the short and numbered days they may be here for. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join my free Telegram group via the link in the description, where we as Muslims can speak freely and without censorship about issues like this, and in order to guide and support each other in our deen. Until next time, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.